All right, what's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in live to Adobe Radio every Thursday at 3 p.m. Pacific Time, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm really excited to introduce our guest today. I messaged him on Instagram, and I absolutely love his nostalgic posts. It's 90s kid for life, Justin Miller. Justin, man, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
You have one of the best nostalgia accounts on Instagram, and I absolutely love the diversity of your post. I am a 90s kid as well. I'm assuming you are too.
That's correct. Actually, I turned 35 this month, so late 80s baby in the house.
There we go. I'm 35 too. All right. Now, just for the listeners to get a little bit of background on you, I'm always curious. Well, first off, congrats on growing this Instagram account to it's like 1.5 million right now.
Yeah, it's just shy of 1.5. We just hit 1.4 this month, so I'd expect probably by the end of July I'll be at 1.5.
Did you ever expect it to grow this big?
Not this fast. I mean, I thought, you always have dreams, right, of starting this and, you goof around thinking it's just a fun project and then, really just started snowballing because I was only at, I started my Instagram account last August. Like it hadn't been around very long. And then I had
Wow.
one video go mega viral that started it all that I have pinned. It's my Walmart video. And, that got me like 40,000 followers in about a week just from that one video, and then it kind of snowballed. And then I hit 100,000 in December, and then from the beginning of the year, I was going by 150 to 200,000 people a month, just continuously, and it hasn't stopped. It slowed down a little, but it's crazy how fast it's grown.
Why did you start this account in the first place?
A lot of stuff. I think when I talk to a lot of content creators, especially in the nostalgia space, good buddy of mine like Fit Dad CEO, any of the or CSA Punch, they all started during COVID. It was the same kind of thing for
Mhm.
me. COVID impacted a lot of people in a lot of negative ways. Either it's depression, anxiety, they missed how things were. And I thought back and reflected, I was like, what am I doing in my spare time during COVID? I'll play my Game Boy, I'll play Super Nintendo, or I'll watch old cartoon shows. And it's like, man, you get like a brief moment of happiness from going back to your childhood. And I was like, well, I can't be the only one who feels this way. So I started a TikTok first before I started into Instagram, and it started taking off. And then I started going into Instagram, and I get messages all the time of like, thank you for creating this. These bring back such memories. I get thousands of messages a day of just people who are just so happy to relive some of the best times in their life. And it's just a fun little, I shouldn't say little, fun community of people. And it's always trying to be positive. There's so much negativity out there nowadays, but it's blown up because it's just a place to escape. And I think it's really cool that everybody just gets so much happiness and gratitude out of it.
I'm happy to hear that as well. And not to get too dark with this, but I was like, I want to look up exactly what nostalgia means and the root word of it. I'm always
Yeah.
fascinated with that exact definitions for things and root words. So nostalgia is a sentimental longing or wistful affection for the past, typically for a period or place with happy personal associations, and it comes from the Greek word nostos, return, and algos, pain. The literal meaning of nostalgia, then, is the suffering evoked by the desire to return to the one's place of origin.
Then you could call me a masochist. Then, and I think there's a fine line,
Mm,
right? And I bring back these memories not to just have people be stuck in the past because then you can't have future growth. But I think it's nice to bring back sentimental memories or just, people forget a lot. There's been a lot of trauma. There's been a lot of negative things that have happened to people. Parents have died, lost jobs. Life's not going the direction that they want, and maybe they just forget. And I don't post a lot of my content just for that exact post. Like I don't post like pictures of old toys just to remember that old toy, right? I try to get trigger memories that are associated with those items. So if I post an old couch that was probably at your grandma's house, I'm not going for the couch itself. I'm trying to evoke emotions and memories that you had of being a kid, having those great times with your grandparents that you may have forgotten, or like, oh, that one time we went to the zoo, or that one time I was homesick and she took care of me. So I think that's what people really appreciate about the page, not the items or, the cereal or whatever it was that evoked an emotion. It's just whatever's associated with that,
Hmm.
that I think is truly really beneficial, of just remembering those things that may have been in the back of your brain that you completely forgot even were there.
Absolutely. I'm really glad you said that because I think it's important to keep moving forward with your life, but at the
Mhm.
same time, having this archive of these pleasant memories is important too, because you just don't want to forget them completely. But again, I'm glad you mentioned that because to live in the past constantly is extremely detrimental. So, but I'm really stoked that you said that because I'm always curious for people. I mean, I don't want to judge or anything like that, but you sometimes come across those people who are constantly like, "Hey, do you remember when? Do you remember?" And it's like you notice that they're constantly living in the past. There's some unresolved issues. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
like the jock that peaked in high school that wears his Letterman jacket kind of
yeah,
vibe.
yeah, that kind of stereotype. And I think it's important to be aware of that, and to keep moving forward, but to just be living in there constantly, I think is a detriment. But I like the purpose of what of your page that you said right now, and it just it makes me feel a lot better about it, honestly, because uh, yeah, the 90s were such a unique time in human history. There was this wonderful balance of the introduction of new technology, but we still had our outside playtime as well. Cell phones were starting to become more popular, but they weren't enveloping our lives.
Hmm.
And there's also like a few things that I want to, specific things from the 90s, including specific TV shows, movies, that just kind of, I don't know, I feel like with art, especially in the 90s, it began the manifestation of our imaginations into something physical we can touch and see a lot more so. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the reason why I say, the 90s are probably one of the greatest decades of all time is just because of how quickly things changed. I mean,
Yeah.
I think the only thing you could equate it to is maybe the Industrial Revolution, of
Mm.
how much technology advanced in such a very short period of time. But I mean, we go from having, pretty rudimentary technology, especially with like video games, right? You had the Atari, Nintendo, and then you got to the Super Nintendo, and then bam, we have the N64, PlayStation, then PS2, and then you have the invention of the internet, right? And that just changed everything. And I think that was just so unique growing up during that decade of, we still had, crossover from the 80s, playing outside, not being addicted to technology, to being completely addicted to technology in 15 years. So it was just a unique period of, we got to do that. Right. Because I'm sure if you ask any, Gen Z is, hey, do you know what the Dewey Decimal System is? They'll just stare at you blankly. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, well, when I was in elementary school, that's how I looked up books, is by the Dewey Decimal System. And now they don't even have to. All the books are on a computer. So it's amazing how fast it evolved, which is, like you mentioned, it's unique on, especially from art, movies, technology, like one of the, I don't know if you've watched that show on Netflix, but it's like, how things, not how things were made, but like how movies were made, like the movies that made us. It's a pretty cool documentary. And it talked about, like, my favorite episode was Jurassic Park, on how they actually adapted using 3D technology for computers as one of, like, that paved the way for new CGI for movies moving forward, when they were actually going to use like claymation for the T-Rex and some of the dinosaurs, and how one of the creators was like, hey, let me show you something, and Spielberg's like, I want that instead. And it just, like you said, it evolved the entertainment industry from that point forward. It catapulted into a whole new era.
Bro, Jurassic Park still holds up.
Correct. I wish we went back to robots for dinosaurs. I think Jurassic Park has scenes that look better than CGI movies. today, honestly.
Bro, 100%. What was so masterful about Jurassic Park is the editing from cutting to, it's dark, rainy CGI Tyrannosaurus Rex. You see it for a little bit, and then, cutting to a real life animatronic and like back and forth, back and forth. So your mind subconsciously begins to not be able to tell the difference anymore, and you're just enveloped in the story so smoothly. A lot of we're not going to mention any names here. I still have an acting career, so and I want to work. But yeah, a lot of modern day CGI films lack that kind of masterful editing of real and CGI for sure.
And I think it's just
Yeah.
because, not to go too off of a tangent, just because I think we're just trying to pump out content so fast, so quickly, right? We're now so instant gratification, like we need. And I think we rush just to get stuff out, just to
Mm-hmm.
fill a void or an empty weekend at the box office, as opposed to just actually creating a masterpiece. I appreciate what James Cameron did with taking, 12, 13 years to come out with the new Avatar. It was incredible. It was original. Of course, it had a long waiting period, but at least the CGI was some of the coolest stuff I ever saw.
Yeah, that's what happens when you pay CGI
$1
FX
billion.
editors. Yeah, their true rate instead of bidding out, to the cheapest bidder for. You know how that works, right?
Oh no, I don't. That's why
Oh, bro.
that's why I didn't go see the new Transformers. I like the concept of it, but I was like, why does the '07, '09 Transformer CGI look better than what they're coming out with in 2023? You'd think it'd be exponentially better, but it looks worse.
Bro, a production company will bid out, hey, we have 20,000 frames of FX work, but they won't say what's in the FX work to the different FX companies. So then it could be a small thing from a small fire on a building
Mhm.
to a robot. And they can't they just go, well, we'll do it for this much. We'll do it for this much. So they're trying to find the cheapest option. And so these
Wow.
FX editors and companies, they're being worked to death to get the product out. And of course it's not going to look great, if you've had only a week to build a fully, functional robot in a fight, in a fight scene.
That's
But
crazy.
I know it's nuts. You said something. The instant gratification is something that I have written down in my notes, and I think that's why the '90s were so great because you still had to wait for things. Okay,
Hmm.
internet wasn't speedy. You had to wait for the website to load up. You had to wait to connect. Even like PS1 games, the loading times, you're sitting there and the anticipation, you appreciated playing the level. Now there is one game, Crash Bandicoot. I don't know if you ever played that on
Of
PS1.
course. Of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah, 10 minutes for a loading time. That's what it felt like. And every time you died, it had to reload and you're like, "Are you serious? That's too long." But for the most part, everything else had a nice, you know, you gotta wait. You got to enjoy it once it's there because it just doesn't happen right away. And I think that's one of the worst things for human beings in general is instant gratification, for sure.
Oh, it's crazy. Like if the internet doesn't load on your phone in the first 2 seconds, people are like, "This is the worst piece of technology I've ever owned," which is just insane to me. But yeah, I think it's funny if you put a kid on a PS1 just to like sit and wait between a load screen, they'd lose their mind. Like they'd go insane.
I know. There's another account, I forgot the name, but they have this amazing retro game setup, and each intro to each game is the same. They take out the game, they show the game, they put it into the system, and they show the loading screen. And it's that loading screen that I always forget about. And I'm like, man, that's right. There's things called load times. I have the PS5 right now, and I can't tell you how amazing it is.
Same, same. I have it set up right here in my basement. I have a media center that I have set up with a like 100-inch screen that I play. Hogwarts Legacy on that thing is incredible. Like
Wait, you have
or
a 100-inch TV? Oh,
projector, not
whoa.
TV, not
I
not
was
TV.
like,
Let's. I'm
dude, you're
not balling
balling,
out like
Justin.
that. I'm not balling out like that. They cut that Reels bonus money off Instagram. I'm not getting that paper anymore. But no, I set it up just because I have a PS5
Mhm.
down here, and then here, and this is like my nostalgia room. I have a Super Nintendo and a Sega hooked up on a TV next to me. But yeah, the PS5, when you look at the color and the pixels on that, it's just Final Fantasy VII is my favorite game all time. I'll say forever. It's the
Ah,
number one game in my opinion. And when you were talking about on the PS1, it's like that game came with 3 discs. That's how massive of a game that was back when it first came out. And then you needed like 3 memory cards just for that
Wow.
game alone. But yeah, it's a when you go from those load times to now seamless interchanging scenes, especially on like Spider-Man on PS5, it's mind blowing.
What's up, everybody? This week's sponsor is Factor Meals, America's #1 meal kit. 2 reasons why I love Factor Meals is that it fits into my lifestyle. I'm super busy. I'm trying to run the #1 podcast on Adobe Radio. I'm trying to keep my employees in check. And I'm doing jujitsu, picketing on the picket lines, and I'm trying to stay in shape on top of all this. Factor Meals are ready to go in less than 2 minutes. Plus, they're full of nutrition and they help me live my protein-rich lifestyle. I don't like to cook, and I don't like to clean. So with Factor Meals, they come in never frozen. I pop it in the microwave for 2 minutes. Boom. Delicious, nutritious meal and easy cleanup. I love it. They've got over 34 weekly restaurant quality dishes such as shrimp risotto, filet mignon, green goddess chicken, and the list goes on and on and on. And let's say you're on the go. Wesam, I don't have a microwave. No problem. They have delicious, healthy grain bowls, salads where you can eat on the go, no microwave required. And I know it's summertime. Don't worry. They've got calorie conscious meals at 550 calories or less per serving. Also, they've got these great things called Protein Plus, where you can get an extra 30 grams of protein or even more. So here's a list of their delicious flavor-packed options on the menu each week. They've got keto to calorie smart, vegan, veggie, protein plus, and if you're looking to mix it up one week, maybe you're like, you know what, I want a little bit extra protein. Boom, you can add protein to any vegan, veggie deal you like, or mix it up vice versa. And for our snackers out there, they've got 45 plus options for your snacks, from apple cinnamon pancakes, bacon and cheddar egg bites, to cold pressed juices, shakes, and smoothies. With Factor, the cherry on top out of all of this, they care about the environment. They offset 100% of their delivery emissions, source 100% renewable electricity for all their production sites and offices, and feature sustainably sourced seafood in their meals. I'm being serious. I've tried Factor now a couple times, and I absolutely love it. It's hassle-free, and my food is ready in 2 minutes with no cleanup. I love it. Now, you might be wondering, well, what's the deal, Wesam? Is Factor going to offer us 10% off only, 20% off? No. Is it 30% off? No. Is it 40% off? 45% off? No. If you're driving, pull over. If you're standing up, sit down. Get ready for this. Head to factormeals.com/WeSam50 and use code WeSam50 to get 50% off. That's code WeSam50 at factormeals.com/WeSam50 to get 50% off. Okay. Why? I'd love to know more in detail why Final Fantasy VII is your favorite game of all time.
I I love RPG games, but when you think of like some of the cutscenes when you're playing Final Fantasy VII, the graphics were just so incredible. I still think some of the cutscenes from Final Fantasy VII, even Final Fantasy X, still hold up today. But there was so much in the game that wasn't scripted, right? For if you think of like a Super Mario world or like a Donkey Kong, you only have level by level, and there's no going off of that. It was when you compare like what some people say are some of the greatest games of all time is like Zelda Ocarina of Time or Final Fantasy VII or any of the Final Fantasies, really, because there's an open world map. So you as a kid didn't have to follow the rules of the game. You could go to anywhere that the game would let you do side quests, interact with a million different characters. You could just forge your own path, which was, I think, sparked a lot of cool creativity for kids back then. It's like, oh no, I'm not going to follow this path. I'm going to do my own thing. And I think on average, that game took like 65 or 70 hours to beat. So I think it was really fun to not just get like a game and then, rent it from Blockbuster. You're done in like 12 hours. You're like, okay, that was cool. This game actually took a lot of figuring out, which I really liked as far as when I was growing up. And it had a strategy. I think I have the strategy guide. I'll have to find it, but it's like a pamphlet like that big that came with it too, just to figure out where you need to go in the game, just to beat it.
Oh, bro, I miss those big magazine ones that you would get from like Walmart or Target. You know what I mean? Like the strategy guides, like the
Yeah.
really big ones. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Those.
Oh, hold on. I have it. Hold on.
Oh my gosh, here we go. Exclusive on Wesam's World. Final Fantasy VII strategy guide. The whole crew wants to see it now.
Oh my god.
It's the original Final Fantasy.
I love that.
And it's, I think, like it's 200 pages just for that. I also have the original Pokemon Red strategy guide for
Whoa.
a retro throwback for the Game Boy. But
Isn't that great? It's so tactile. You feel it, you know, it's more immersive that way instead of just looking up the strategies on your phone or on your computer. I love that feeling.
it's so good. So good.
Makes it more immersive. Now,
Books underrated.
oh yeah. Were you a Mario Kart fan at all growing up?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. I have it. I have a copy of it right next to me.
So in this room right now, I am the best Mario Kart player by far.
On Switch or on Super Nintendo?
Any. I beat out my producer very easily. I tried to get him to join the the Mario Kart World Tour and on the app on the phone, but he's like too scared to get it. And it's fine.
Who's your character? Who's your go-to on the game?
Yoshi. I was
Yeah.
old school. Yoshi.
Same.
64, I would always play Yoshi. I don't think they made that big of a difference, right, on the 64 version?
I don't think so. Mm-mm.
No. But no, I played a lot of Mario Kart, but in terms of adventure game, Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie were my every weekend at Blockbuster. I should have just bought the game.
I heard those games were hard back then. I didn't notice. I didn't have an N64. I had a PS1, so I would have to go to friends to play N64, and I think that like separated kids into two different categories. You either played N64 or you played PlayStation.
Yeah.
In the 90s, and I was always a PlayStation guy.
Yeah. It was that adventure aspect. It wasn't RPG, but you can go anywhere. You know, you'd have to get the puzzle pieces to open up different levels, and it was very explorative. And I think I still like those type of explorative games. And I do like RPG as well whenever it's mixed into that adventure type of game.
Yeah, no, it's crazy too. Just when you see of how big these games are getting, especially on the PlayStation 5, it's amazing. It just the Real Engine 5 that's coming out with these new games and the production that they can do. I've seen clips of it where it's like people walking through snow, and you're like, is this really just like a GoPro footage? It looks so realistic. I can't imagine what the future of gaming looks like in just 5 years from now.
I think we're really lucky too because we appreciate having the old school systems and seeing it evolve so drastically over time. Like I'm always wondering, like kids who are born in this decade, what their video game systems are going to be like in 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, and you're just like,
assuming there's a world here in 70 years, but
I hope
that's
so.
another conversation.
I hope so. Have you ever played LAPD Cop on PS1? Oh, a Future Cop. That's what it's called. Future LAPD Cop. And it's the most obscure type of PS1 game. You play as a cop in Los Angeles in the future, and your vehicle transforms into like this bipedal machine and then into like this regular cop car that hovers. And it was the most difficult thing in the world to play ever. Have you ever played it? No, you guys ever? Yeah, it was the most difficult thing to play. I played with the first time I played PS1 was with my cousins in Syria, and it was I didn't even know what a PS1 was, and so that was my first time experiencing it. Now they had a lot of bootleg games. I don't know if you know this, but with like foreign countries, their bootleg game is pretty high. Bootleg. I'm saying it right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The audio is you're hearing me through the mic, right? No. Okay. That's okay, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I just had a complete freak out. We weren't recording audio for a second. Yeah, we played this soccer game that was all in Japanese that they had memorized which buttons did what for what to pick which teams, etc.
Gotcha.
And then we played Dino Crisis. Have you ever played Dino
Oh
Crisis?
God, that's one of the greatest PS1 games I think ever. It's great. It was like what was it? It was like Resident Evil meets Tomb Raider, but
Yeah,
with dinosaurs. Like it was so great.
it was difficult.
Yeah, it was super hard. Yeah, absolutely. But I
Yeah.
loved anything with dinosaurs. I was so obsessed with dinosaurs as a kid. So that game was great. And it's super expensive too now. If you like for pieces that I try to add to my collection, I'm not one of these diehards that buys, thousands and thousands of dollars worth of old games or,
Yeah.
old nostalgic toys. But, there's a few items I try to get. And I was looking on the internet for Dino Crisis, like a used copy is like $150, $300 for Dino Crisis.
Whoa.
It's crazy. And I think that's really, especially like post COVID, how much like that era, 90s, early 2000s, has blown up as far as a collectible. I think a lot of that has to do with Logan Paul and
Mm,
his affinity for Pokemon cards and how much that has blown up, especially since the start of COVID. That has made a really big comeback as far as the value or how much people are after those types of items. There's a lot of creators that have spun off from Pokemon the last couple of years. Was it Leonhardt? He's a big creator, I think, specifically around opening old packs. There's a few other creators too, but
yeah.
you see it now all over TikTok or Instagram. Like people are, that's their business. It's just buying and selling old Pokemon cards. But when Logan Paul came out with his fight with a holographic Charizard around his neck, and then buying base set booster boxes for $1 million in cash, it's wild. And so if you look at just on the internet of how expensive like a Super Nintendo goes for, it's like $250, $300, just
Yeah.
because it's become such a wanted item. But I think we're hitting that age as millennials of when we really start yearning for the past, because we've been in our careers in adulthood, we can say since 24, 25, and when you really started getting serious about being an adult. So what's that, 10 years now?
Mhm.
And after the grind, you're like, man, this really sucks. And I think that's why so many businesses are marketing to nostalgia. You have Sunny Delight hard seltzer. You have Mountain Dew, hard beverages coming out. You have Igloo coolers that are doing 90s retro stuff. Chubby's, Roosevelt's, they're all doing the same kind of marketing to nostalgia. And it's become such a hot item because I think we're just hitting that point in time in our lives where we're just real tired of the day-to-day grind, and
Mhm.
we're reflecting on what was super easy. And for a business model, it's good for capitalism, but it's funny to see, if you pay attention, how much they're really pushing the nostalgic vibe of those 2 decades right now, especially like Target, right? Y2K clothing line for women's apparel is going bonkers right now.
Wow. I'm not in the loop with Y2K female clothing lines.
If you want to go down a rabbit hole, just ask some of your female friends about it. But that's like, I guess, low cut jeans or whatever. I'm not an expert either, but supposedly that's the hot thing going on right now, or
Our
mesh
in
tops.
our intern is a expert on low cut jeans. That's all he.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what he does in his spare time. It's a little weird, but it's fine. Um, Real quick, the Dino Crisis game my cousins had was in
Yeah.
Japanese
Nice.
as well. So we only got to a certain level where you had to solve a puzzle, but we didn't know what to do because it's all in Japanese, and we're just like hitting random buttons, and that's as far as we would ever get in the game. We're like, well, we can only play this for 30 minutes before we just hit a dead end. Um, Now, do you think going
Rarely.
back to the 90s, same. No, but do you think there's stuff in the 90s that maybe we've over romanticized a little bit into thinking like they were great, but when we really think about them, we're like, wait a minute, it probably wasn't that great. Is there anything that comes to your mind being so enveloped in the 90s world?
It's tough, right? Because as a kid, you just see a lot of stuff, or at least for my childhood. I know not everyone has the benefit of a great childhood, but you see
Hmm.
the world through rose-colored glasses, right? So it's kind of hard to look back and think of something that was not very great. Um, I think demographics and your ethnicity really plays a part too, in what type of childhood that you had. It's tough for me to combat someone of a different race or a different background, right? Because I'm a Caucasian male. I had a lot of benefits of my background. Now, I came from a poor family. My dad was in the military, so we moved all the time. I actually, just a little bit about me. I went to a different elementary school for each grade growing up. So 1 through 6 was a different school every
Wow.
single year. I moved about 15 times before I was 12 years old. So we were all over. So I had to be an extreme extrovert to make friends, or you just didn't have any friends from constantly moving. You'd be the kid in the corner. Uh, so looking back, that was tough, but I think because of that life experience, it set me for, my outside career, my ability to connect with people, network, start conversations. So I'm really glad I had some of those experiences, but looking back for me, there wasn't a whole lot that I didn't enjoy outside of the moving around aspect. And it's if you just look at the 90s, right, as even as an adult, there's a pretty small amount of conflict, right? We just come out of the Cold War in the 80s. You had, the Russian Bosnia conflict. You had some of the bombings that went on some of the World Trade Centers. You had the Gulf War, but that only lasted about a week or two. And then it was pretty quiet, right? Up until 9/11, when certainly circumstances changed there, but there wasn't a lot going on. It's funny because people completely forget the Oklahoma City bombing. That's like something that we never talk about. That was massive.
I lived in Oklahoma when that happened. I was in
Did
Tulsa.
you? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy, but it's like that's a topic that I feel like never gets discussed. Like that got swept under the rug. But outside of some of those atrocities, there wasn't like a ton that I remember that went poorly in the 90s.
Mhm.
And then when you look at just the market and the economy, the 90s was one of the strongest bull market runs in the stock market history. So, unemployment was low during that time. Growth was great. Inflation was low during that point in time too. So even as, a boomer, that was a great period of time as well. So, there was, of course, there's plenty going on with racism. You had the Rodney King events that went on. So it just depends on your background, that I think, of how much you romanticize
Yeah.
the 90s. And I certainly don't want to look the other way to that. For me, I don't think there was anything that I over romanticize. I think it's funny of like, what advancements would I say we should get rid of? I think that the invention of the internet has really backfired to a degree for a lot of us, especially the capability to have it on a smartphone. I think has really set people back as far as their mental health and experiencing, like you said, not living in the past. But I think people aren't living in the past, they're living in their phone. And you see that every single day. You go out to a restaurant, you see a couple out on a date, they're not even looking at each other. They're looking at their phone. And it's incredible to see how much I feel like people are missing, just how much they're glued to technology.
Yeah. That's one of my rules. If I'm out on a date, there's no eye contact involved. So
It's a good rule. That's
it's a
fine.
great rule. It's a great rule. I feel it works for me. No, again, man. It was it's always a risk whenever I message someone and I like their content and bringing them on this show that I've never met or talked to before. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
so glad you're just a nice, well-rounded human being who has really good perspective, and that you're not blind to the fact that other people have had a different childhood than you, and
Yeah.
that you realize that it wasn't all perfect for everyone. And I'm just really glad that you have this like dynamic view on life, and that you're honest about it with yourself and now the viewers. So that's really cool, man. And I think that's important, because there was a part of me before we did this interview where I was in complete honesty. I'm like, man, I don't know if Justin's going to be just one of these guys who's like, the 90s are the place to live, like some weird creep. And, like, and I'm like, yeah, man, it's cool. It's like, do you want to come live in the 90s with me? And I'm like, okay, man.
You want to come down into my basement?
Yeah. So that's awesome. I can think of one thing I over romanticized from the 90s though, that
Okay.
Jnco jeans I thought were the coolest thing in the world. Oh my god, my
Who just said that?
my producer.
He can see himself out. It's fine.
Oh, oof. Jnco jeans. Look them up on your phone. I thought they were the coolest thing. I was like, man, if you got
Why
Jnco
did we think that though? Like, who programmed us to be like, these are the coolest jeans? in the world. They were the most impractical piece of clothing. I only owned one pair, but that was because it was like a $300 pair of jeans back then. And my grandma bought me a pair, and they weren't even comfortable.
You know what
They
it
were
was? The edgy kids were wearing them. And you're like, oh, that's cool. The edgy, and but then whenever it rained or there was a puddle, you're like, oh, there goes my whole day. I'm just gonna be wet the whole day from my ankles down. Awesome.
they were like extra bell bottoms too at the
Yes.
bottom. They were like they parachuted out. And I think it was like you had the coolest Jnco jeans depending on what the design was on the back pocket, on how they spelled Jnco or whatever character that they had
Yeah.
on them. But I couldn't believe it. And now they're making a comeback too. Like they're selling for like $500-$600, and kids in high school are wearing them.
Not
Again, I'm
practical.
just like, that's not a good look.
If there's a tiger escape from the zoo and you're wearing Jnco jeans, goodbye. Goodbye, sir.
Or you could just catch it in the pair of jeans.
You know what? Actually, wait, you're on to something here, Justin. I think the jeans might give you extra things for the tiger to bite on. And like, it's like, oh, it's like extra armor for you. Anyway, this podcast is stupid.
My IQ is not helping for the direction of that. So I apologize.
No. This podcast gets ridiculous. So one of my favorite cartoons growing up, and listen, for the people commenting below, I know we're gonna, what is it? Oh my God. Melt into the early 2000s here, so it's not fully 90s. So before you start typing away, I was a big fan of Rugrats, watching it growing up.
Great show.
Great show. Favorite episode, I gotta say this on air. The Sky is Falling. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Where they think the kids think, the babies think the sky is falling, so they go into this post-apocalyptic fantasy where it's like Mad Max inspired too. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I gotta rewatch.
Okay.
I mean, my favorite episode is the watermelon seed episode. But
Yes.
I'll let you finish why that's your favorite episode. I want to hear it.
Oh, it was just they made it. They had a touch of Mad Max in there, so the kids were like, "Oh my God, the sky's falling!" And then they come out of the house and they can't find their parents for whatever reason. I forgot why the dads aren't there, and they're like, "That's it, we're living on our own now." And they start having these fantasies of like where we'll drive the barren wasteland, and they're dressed as Mad Max characters. But growing up, and I don't know if you've had this kind of like, not fantasy, but maybe it is called a fantasy. Like, what happens if you woke up one day as a kid and your parents aren't there and nobody's there? What are you going to do in the world? Did you ever think about that as a kid?
Yeah, I mean, I had an interesting childhood just because, my parents trusted me at a very young age, right? And I don't know if it was like because of the military thing or just they were working multiple jobs.
Yeah.
But I was a home alone. I probably can say this now. Statute of limitations is over. I was probably 9 years old when they left me at home.
Oh yeah,
alone, 8 or 9.
Yeah.
And it's just like, man, if you did that today, like you'd have social workers called on you if you left your kids at home. So, I always thought about it, man, what would happen? But I was pretty self-sufficient, right? Like you already knew how to make food for yourself. You could use the oven, you could use microwave, but yeah, it'd be terrifying just to wake up, parents gone. But
yeah,
what am I gonna do?
That's why it was like this, like, whoa, what if that, and what if that really happened? So that's why that's one of my favorite episodes. You like the watermelon. That one is classic.
Yeah, because you freaked out as a little kid. You're like, wait, is this a real thing? Like if you eat a watermelon seed, you're gonna have a watermelon grow inside your stomach. That episode sticks with me to this day.
So 3rd grade for me, I was drinking something, had ice in there, had a piece of ice in my mouth. I swallowed the piece of ice.
Okay.
And I was like, oh no. And then I went up to the teacher. I'm like, I swallowed a piece of ice. And she was just like, you're gonna be okay. I'm like, okay.
Cool story, bro.
What did you think was gonna happen?
Dude, I'm in 3rd grade. I'm an idiot.
Yeah, I know. But
I was scared.
in your mind, like, what is worst case scenario from that?
Bro,
It's gonna freeze your stomach. That's it. You're gonna die.
Yeah, it was the stupidest thing. I'm a kid. Like, there's no explanation to that. You just get freaked out as a kid. It's like you can't swallow,
Gum.
gum, hard thing. You know, you don't want to swallow it whole. So as a kid, you're freaking out. You're like, swallow a piece of ice. Am I gonna die? Do I need to go to
Or
the doctor?
or Pop Rocks and soda. That was another
Oh
big wives'
yeah.
tale growing up. It's like, oh, don't do that. Your stomach will implode. And so you never had the courage to actually do it until you found out. It's like, oh, everybody was lying to me.
Favorite snacks from the 90s?
Gushers, fruit roll-ups.
My man.
Those Kraft pretzel sticks with the cheese dip that you could do in that was good.
My man.
Like, no wonder we have diabetes like so prevalent.
Sweet tarts.
Sweet tarts, classic. Starburst, probably. Dunkaroos, another good one. Surge was my favorite drink of all time, and it's just like, man, no wonder it was banned when you look back of how many grams of sugar were in just like an 8-ounce can. I think it was like 55 grams of sugar just in one.
This is they've done studies. If you pass the 50-gram mark, it actually becomes healthy for you.
Nice. I like that.
That was a joke, Zeke. Zeke.
I know.
Oh, okay.
That's what I'm looking at.
My intern. I don't know. Zeke's look. My intern was like, huh.
I haven't heard that. Is that in the New England Journal of Medicine? I
It
need to
is
read that.
actually. Yeah, it's New England Journal, Los Angeles Journal, Tulsa, Oklahoma Journal. I
Tulsa.
loved.
That must have been an interesting change from Syria, huh? Coming from Syria to Tulsa, that had been a huge culture shock, right?
Well, I moved to the States, to New York when I was 2.
okay.
I lived in New York till I was 7. Moved to Tulsa since I was when I was 7. Stayed there till 2009 because that's where I went to college there as well. And then I've been in LA ever since. So
Nice.
yeah. So I've assimilated here and everything since a young age. But Tulsa, Oklahoma was very chill, man. Especially in the 90s. Great place to raise a family.
Laid
Very
back.
suburban. Yeah.
Yeah.
No issues really.
Blue collar, super quiet.
Yeah. It's changed a lot since I've gone back. Not a crazy amount, but enough. Are you still in the same town you grew? Or no, because you moved a lot. That's right.
Yeah, no, I've actually reflected on it because I had to move a lot for work too out in the real world.
What do you
I
do?
look at wealth management. So
okay. Yeah.
But looking back on it, I'm 34. I've done the math. I've moved once a year since I was born. That's how many times I've moved.
Bro.
Yeah. It's bad. I thought about it. I counted it. I was like, that can't be right. And I'm like, I've moved 34 times in my life. I'm over it.
I've moved twice since I've lived in Los Angeles, and I'm like, I don't like to move. I need that home base feeling. Wow, that's amazing, dude. That's great. Are you settled now and where you want to be?
Yeah, I mean,
All right.
we're settled here in Colorado, and I
Mhm.
think we're probably gonna stay here for at least a while. I was in Florida before here, and people crap on Florida all the time, and I think it's just because they're jealous. Florida's amazing. Like I'll say Florida is incredible, especially if you like the ocean. I'm a big deep sea fishing guy, so I would go out all the time.
Ooh.
But going from the ocean to the mountains, it's a big change. I love the mountains. Love going kayaking, whitewater rafting, and hiking all the time. But I miss the water, and it's changed a lot, right? So my dad retired from the military here in Colorado, in northern Colorado, in Fort Collins. So I spent like a decade here, went to high school here, went to college, Colorado State, and then started my life and was a nomad for a while. But coming back, like you said, it's amazing how much places have changed. If you leave for a while, and it's just the population's gotten so big here, especially since COVID. Colorado's been so popular, especially with people from California moving out here. It's wild.
Yeah, man. Time's interesting like that.
Time is undefeated, as they say. Father Time is undefeated. I like that line.
Very much so. You might have hit on it a little bit, but I'm hoping for maybe a deeper answer here.
Yeah.
How do you stay? Change it's going to happen in life. That's like the thing that I know in this life. One of the few things I do know. change is always going to happen, whether it's change within yourself or change in the outside world. Like change is inevitable. Even like the things you hold on to, after a certain time, I feel like even your relationship of how much you like them or dislike them changes too. How do you create that healthy balance of not living in the past to those things too much? You know what I mean? But still hold them in reference. Like what exact That's me actually. Oh my gosh.
I had a heart attack. I thought it was my last.
No, it was me. Oh my gosh. Scared me even more because we got so like serious there for a second. I was like, oh.
Mood killer.
Yeah, how do you keep that healthy balance, you know?
I I think it's important to everyone has passions, right? Like everybody's addicted. I feel like people have their vices, whether it's working out, whether it's food, travel, hobbies. I think you find balance in everything in life. And for me, when it comes to creating content, because, I do spend a lot of time, whether it's videos, creating original content, posting. It's really aggravating. They just created Threads. So now I have to have a new social media platform that I have to have exposure on. Now it gets pretty overwhelming because this is not a full-time gig for me. Maybe one day it will be. That would certainly be the end goal if I could replace my income with being a creator. But for right now, I have my day job. I have this. I have personal relationships I have to maintain as well. So it's a constant struggle. To the specific question of not getting enveloped in nostalgia, it's just I'm very pragmatic in realizing what's real and what's not, and understanding that you had those experiences, but that's not the real world anymore. I think you have to maintain that mindset, or you're going to fall into that pitfall of trying so hard to go back and ruining what life has to offer. Now you can be one of those creepy guys that's like, let's go back, travel back in time with me, let's only live here. And I think there's still a lot of things to look forward to in the world, especially whether it's with friends, personal relationships, seeing the world. I'm like I said, I'm a huge extrovert. I have a lot of passion for traveling, exploring. So I always know when I need to take breaks from when I'm getting too caught up in whether it's just the real world or, content creation as well. But I think you just have to know yourself, right? If you're someone that has an addictive personality, maybe that's not something that's for you. It's all about control, right? And for some people, maybe that line gets blurred and it's not something that they can do. But for me, it's a healthy balance because life can get you down. There's ups and downs in the everyday world, but this is something that's like, oh, I really enjoy this. But for me, if it gets to a point where I just don't enjoy it, I'll just stop. I have no problem stopping. But for right now, the ride is, I enjoy what I do. I think the biggest thing I enjoy about doing this content creation is the messages that I get on how I impact people. So I take screenshots of every single person that sends a message that's not just, hey, I love the page or this is a great page, but like actual true heartfelt messages where it impacted them in some way. And then when I see all of those, that's kind of just like a reason or having a purpose. So I think if you don't have a value proposition, it's really hard to keep going on what your mission is, what your drive is. And for me, I think it's just bringing either emotions or making people feel something that they haven't felt in a while, or are bringing back some brief moments of joy and happiness. That is why I do the content that I do. I even talked about this back in December. I was on another podcast. I was out in Japan. I was posting some content. I made a couple original skits, and then I got a message. Oh, I did an homage to Jason David Frank, who was a Green Ranger. He committed suicide back in November. I made a video just on of the impact that you have in the world and how you should never use that as an outlet. And I got quite a few messages, pretty much entirely positive from it. And then I had a guy message me I think like 2 days later, 3 days later, that said, "Hey, I watched your video and it was because of you that I didn't commit suicide that night." And when I found that I had that big of an impact in someone's life, I took a screenshot of that. I still have that message to this day. I messaged him back, obviously, talked with him for, half an hour, just messaging back and forth, and said, "Hey, if you need help, here's some hotlines. You can always reach out to me, but certainly if this is something that's weighing on you to this degree, I think you should see help." And he was very grateful for the conversation. But it's like moments like that, I certainly don't want to take for granted. Like, wow, I had such an impact that I at least saved one person's life. At the end of the day, even if this goes nowhere, that's something cool that I can just keep and reflect on.
Yeah. Much respect, man. I really respect that a lot. And you could have easily just not addressed it or answered him, because you're uncomfortable or whatnot. But for you to help him out and just be there, that's a lot, man. This world needs more of that for sure.
Definitely.
You said to me you are starting a podcast.
I am. Yes, trying to. I've been saying it for months, but I finally got all the equipment. I finally got a co-host as well now, and then I have quite a few guests. So I should be hopefully recording the first episode in the next couple of days, and then I don't know how long everything's going to take. I'm not good at this by any means, but hopefully, shortly after that, get it out. But yeah, I'm very excited for it.
Dude, what's it going to be about?
So basically, all I want to do is talk, of course, 90s and early 2000s, but primarily having unique guests on to talk about their experience. Because, I always say I'm not that as cool as people think I am. I'm not that interesting. So I want to try and get on as many people that follow me or, people I follow back on the show. And I have actually a pretty incredible list of guests who want to come on already. I won't say names, but they include, actors, NFL players, NBA players. Like there's some actual, interesting people that want to come on and talk. And I just want to engage about what made their life experiences unique to get them to where they are now. Of course, I want to ask them all their favorite things, like, toys, movies, cartoons, what have you. But I always like interesting people and having engaging conversations of like, what inspired you to get from X to Y? Like, I'm very curious to see what was so different about your childhood that led to such success or this specific field. So I'm pretty excited for it.
That's awesome, man. I can't wait for it to come out. And you'll be posting about it on your 90s Kid for Life Instagram page, or is it going to be a separate account?
I'll probably do a collab, but I'll probably create a unique Instagram page for it because I just don't want to jade or overwhelm my current audience that has no interest in that. But it's going to be called the 90s Kid 3N Podcasts, and the 3N stand for 90s Naughties, which, if you don't know, Naughties stands for 2000s. It's from 2000 2009. I just found that out a couple of weeks ago. Pretty cool. And nostalgia. So
I like that. Pretty
excited for it. Should be fun. I'm sure the first couple of episodes are going to be brutal just from an audio and editing perspective. So be patient. Okay. But yeah, it'll be a fun project, passion project, more or less.
I can't wait to listen to it, man. I've got to suggest to you my top 5 best films of all time for me. And it's from the 90s.
Is it are we putting in a certain category or just all time? Ever?
All time, right, but it just happens to be a 90s film.
Okay, got it.
The Game.
The Game.
See, I knew it. It's under the radar. That's why I love it. It's under the radar.
The Game.
The Game.
Who is the lead actor or actress of this movie?
He's a little actor called Michael Douglas. I don't know if you know him.
Okay. Yeah, of course.
Now, here's the thing. I'm going to be annoying about this.
The Game. How have I never heard of this movie?
Sean Penn is in it, too.
Some heavy heat in this movie.
Heavy heat. Justin, I can't tell you a lot about it because even a little bit will ruin your experience with the film.
Okay, got it. I'll watch it. I'll put it on my watch list.
Trust me here. Slightly slow burn in the first 30 minutes, okay? I give you that.
That's a long, slow burn.
My friend, My friend, it is worth it. Remember what we talked about? Delayed gratification.
That's right. Okay.
Okay.
Patience.
Bring yourself back to the 90s when you watch it. I am telling you, it's so good. One of the reasons it's good, without giving away anything, there's no cell phones to ruin it. Okay? There's no cell phones to ruin this film. Because if there were cell phones in this movie, if it was done nowadays, it would be a challenge. You saw it, right?
No, not yet. You keep saying you're going to show it to me, and then you've never showed it to me.
We're watching it this week.
Okay.
You free?
When did it come out? What year was it? Was it early? It had to have been early 90s. What, like 93? I'm just going to guess it's before 95 because I don't know it.
97.
97.
Dang.
97.
97. And that same year as Independence Day came out in 97. I think it's probably the same year.
Listen.
Oh, nothing. Oh, you're going to say it has nothing on it.
Independence what? Independence what? We've got one more minute left here on Adobe Radio. But before we sign out, for the people listening live on Adobe Radio, your Instagram handle is at 90s Kid for Life.
Yep. Number 4, Y in life.
Awesome. That's where you can check out all of Justin's wonderful nostalgia posts and keep an eye out for his podcast that will be coming out tomorrow, right? No, I'm kidding.
Yep. That's it.
Tomorrow.
Disappointing people already. Can't wait.
Thanks for tuning in live to Adobe Radio. We are on Instagram at Wesam's World, and be sure to follow us on YouTube and all the other social medias. Thanks for tuning in live. The show continues on. Yeah, man, that is the game is one of my favorite. If you watch it, please let me know. Let me know what you think.
Oh, I'll watch it for sure. I'll keep my word. I'll watch it and I'll DM you.
We could talk about it. Oh, dude, we could talk about it if on the podcast. Oh my god, bro.
That's what we'll talk about when you come on. We'll talk about the game.
I love talking about the game. I love talking about the game so much.
What are your 5 favorite movies from the 90s?
Jurassic Park has to be in there.
Agreed.
Because
that has to be in my top 5.
The atmosphere, everything, the game. Let's see. I had a list of some of them here. Fight Club.
Was that 90? Was that 99? I thought Fight Club was 2000.
I was pretty sure it was 1999.
Nice. Made the cut.
Made the cut. Yeah, now I'm trying to think. Fight Club, Jurassic Park, the game. I'm trying to think what else comes to mind because I'm always nervous it's going to be early 2000s, you know?
Mm-hmm.
What about you?
Jurassic Park's definitely in my top 5. A great Nicolas Cage film, The Rock. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie. That movie's phenomenal. It's Sean Connery in his prime. That movie slept on, in my opinion. I would say, oh man, I'm trying to determine which Adam Sandler movie I'm going to pick. I'm torn between Waterboy and Happy Gilmore. Oh, I'm going to have to go Happy Gilmore. Probably.
I'm some Waterboy.
It's so good. I could quote all those movies all day.
Oh my gosh, I'm going through a list now. Pulp Fiction came out, but I only appreciate that after, not like during the 90s. You know what I mean?
I probably shouldn't have saw The Rock in the 90s, but I did see that movie. It's funny too. I actually saw South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut in the 90s too. I think that was 99, which is a movie that no kid should probably have watched, but it was a solid movie.
Okay, here's and I'm not going to ask my intern this question because he gave the stupidest answer of all time. Okay? And it made me so angry when he said it. I asked everybody in the group here, what if you could only watch films from a certain decade, what decade would you choose? Yeah. You see how everybody's getting angry? This guy, everybody's like 80s, 90s, early 2000s. He goes 2080s. And we're like, what?
It's the future.
The future. Future movies. He does. Unreal. Unreal. So I got to ask you the same question. What decade, if you could only watch films and you know what, TV shows from that decade, what decade would it be?
I would probably still have to go 2000s, even though I love the 90s. I'm just trying to think of some of the best comedy movies I've ever seen. It'd be hard to give those up, like Wedding Crashers, Super Bad, Forgetting Sarah Marshall, any of those classic 2000s comedies before we got too politically correct. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's a great time frame. Plus, that was like I got really into anime because of Adult Swim and Cartoon Network, and a lot of those were like prime in the 2000s as well, as far as when we got exposure in the United States to them with like Inuyasha, or of course later on in Dragon Ball Z episodes that came out. There was so many good shows in my opinion. It's hard giving up those cartoons, like you have Hey Arnold, Doug, Rugrats, all the classics, Angry Beavers back then, but I think there was still plenty of good stuff that came out into 2000s. But that's a different time, right? You appreciate especially a lot of those comedies as you're like a young teenager growing up. I posted a clip from Not Another Teen Movie the other day, and that thing blew up, and I didn't realize how many people appreciated that movie as like the first parody movie that came out. And it's so great.
Oh yeah. I've been rewatching Are You Afraid of the Dark on some of it's
The
on
original
YouTube.
ones on Paramount.
Yeah.
Well, you can watch it if you have Paramount Plus. They're all on there.
Oh, really?
On there
Okay.
too. Yeah.
Um, not as scary as I remember.
Well, yeah.
Proposing to the Midnight Society. Oh man, as a kid, I was terrified. I couldn't watch that show.
Same.
The intro alone was like, nope, I'm out.
Some of the it's Canadian based, not to bash on any of the Canadian production or acting choices, but of course it's made for kids. But there's this one episode in particular which had me cracking up so hard.
Oh yeah.
And it was just because it was the creepiest thing, and in a real life situation that would never happen. But it was the one where I think, yeah, it's a black family. They go on a vacation home, but in the vacation home by the lake, there's that weird kid who looks like he's from the 1920s, and he's like,
He's like, I'm cold. Is that the episode? No.
no, he's like, hi, my parents aren't here, but I can help you bring in your things. It's like he's the host of the vacation home for him, and he starts
Nope.
sucking their life force because there's mirrors all over the house. You guys don't know what I'm talking about, do you?
Nope.
Okay, so
But as soon as there's a little kid involved with a creepy voice, I'm out. I'm like, nope.
but he's not
Bye.
little. He's like 13. He looks 13. So it's just like, so it's even weirder to where if you were the family, any of the family members would be like, hey, we're not staying here. This is so bizarre. This place is filled with mirrors, and this kid is dressed like he's in the 1920s, and he screams if you take a picture of him, like he doesn't want his picture taken.
That's terrifying.
It's hilarious.
Goosebumps had some scary shows as a kid too.
Goosebumps.
Like, what is the Slappy, that marionette puppet? Nope.
At what, Horrorland?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's terrifying as well. Or
That
like
was layered.
My Neighbors Are Aliens, I think, where they're just like
Mm.
eating people in front of that little girl. It's also terrifying. And then come to find out her parents are aliens too. Spoiler alert.
Come on, man.
Watch that tonight.
You're gonna watch it tonight?
Let's go watch
You
that.
should. They're so good. They're so bad. They're so bad, but they're so good.
They are.
Watching
So-
some of those.
especially now because like I'm an actor and like, looking back and knowing how everything's filmed, I'm like, oh wow, the impact those things have had. I mean, watching anything it's very hard for me to like suspend my disbelief now, obviously, but there was some good times had rewatching those things. Justin, this was an absolute pleasure, man. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thank you. I love it. I really appreciate being able to come on and talk. I hope I wasn't too boring.
You're not boring at all, dude. You were a pleasant surprise, and it was nice to relive some of those old '90s memories with you. And again, if I'm really excited for your podcast. Best of luck with it. I can't wait to listen and be on it, and to talk about the game and
Can't
argue
wait, the game.
and
Yeah.
argue with it with people. And then yeah, '90s kid for life on Instagram, right?
That's right.
Awesome, Justin. Thanks for coming to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for tuning in. And remember to follow us at Wesam's World. Hit the subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. Hit the bell icon and comment below on some of your favorite 90s TV shows, movies, or food as well. We'd love to hear from you. Always remember to listen, think, and then talk. Bye.